Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Meals from the Farm event put on by Farm and Food Care Saskatchewan. We have a really exciting day for you planned today, and part of this day is to make sure that you understand a little bit more where your food comes from. So we have 6 schools throughout the province of Saskatchewan who are partnering with Farm and Food Care Saskatchewan to get an actual lunch brought to you by your local Tim Hortons. Now, part of that lunch from the local Tim Hortons is a freshly cracked egg. So what we've done is we've taken the time to do a little bit of a virtual tour of my egg farm out in Lanigan, Saskatchewan. And what we're going to do is we're going to tour this farm virtually, or my farm virtually, and then afterwards we have about 20 minutes for Q&A. So please enjoy the video and get ready to ask me questions. Hi, everyone. My name is Clinton Monchuk. I am the Executive Director of Farm and Food Care, but also a farmer from Lanigan. Today, what I'm going to do is give you a tour of Monchuk egg farms. You can see I'm outside right now. Inside this barn, we have the processing of table eggs that you will eventually eat at some point in time during your breakfasts and today at your lunch. These are eggs that are similarly produced on any other farm here in the province of Saskatchewan and around Canada to make sure you have fresh eggs every day. So part of what we are going to talk about, especially with the ongoing issues with avian influenza in Canada, is the fact that all of our barns here are biosecured, meaning we have locks on every barn to make sure only those people who can go in and enter into our barns. We also have premise ID signs to make sure that things like feed trucks or egg pickup trucks know exactly where we are. So one of the things that I talked about is the biosecurity, and this is, you can see I've already have my different clothes on. So we have to change all our clothes, wash our hands, make sure that none of those outside things end up inside the barn because we don't want to harm the birds. We also have these biosecurity lines, so that just gives us a friendly reminder that we can't pass through one zone to the other without physically changing our clothes. So as we go into the barn, you can see that we have, here's a washroom to change our clothes for everybody who comes in. We have a visitor log to make sure that we know who is coming in and out, and really only people that have our password to get into the barn can actually get in. And then through that door right there are our birds. So I'll show you what our birds look like. And again, we have to change our little booties. So right now I have Crocs on, similar to what you guys probably have. And I have to put on rubber boots to get into the portion of the barn where the birds are, and we have to be a little bit more quiet, so I'll try and be as quiet as possible. So here I am suited up, I have my rubber boots on. We're going to go through the door. So you can see the eggs are slowly going up the conveyor, and you can see all the eggs that the hens have laid inside. So the other thing I want to make mention, you see I have a mask on. This is another thing, we make sure that anything that's in my lungs or on my face is protected from the birds as well. So here's where the birds are. I'm just going to open this up so you can see a little bit better. I'll be very quiet. So you see those little red things up there? That's the water. So that's where the birds will drink their water. There's their little nipples that they peck at. And down beneath here, this is where their feed is. Right there. Sometimes I get a little scared when I come in. And these are the places where they lay their eggs. They're called nest boxes. So it's a really comfortable place where they like to just go. It's a little bit darker in there. and they feel comfortable laying an egg in there. It rolls down onto that conveyor that I showed you, and it eventually goes all the way up in the back. So this barn is called a free run barn, so the birds have the ability to fly around and go around. But this is one of the barns. Every barn is a little bit different. Every barn has its pros and cons. There's an enriched housing systems, traditional housing systems. They all have their benefits, their pros and cons. But this is the one that we have built here in Lanigan. So I'll go back out, make sure it's locked in place. The other thing that I want to talk about, I talked about the feed that comes in. So the feed truck comes every day. This is a sample of the feed. You can see it's kind of crumbly, pellety stuff. And every couple weeks we get new loads of feed that come in. And this is all balanced from animal science nutritionist to make sure that we have the proper amounts of energy, protein, vitamins, minerals to make sure our birds are as healthy as possible. And this is what those feed lines look like right there. So this is the feed that goes in there. It's kind of hard to see. And then there's just different rows of the birds that you can see throughout the barn. And again, as mentioned before, there's about 7,000 birds in this barn, and we would be one of the smaller barns here in Saskatchewan. So part of our processing is taking the eggs out of the barn, like I mentioned before, and going through the packing system. And I'll show you the packing system. So here's the packing system. All the eggs go through a little thing right here that puts it onto these 2.5 dozen cartons. And this is Fabian. Fabian's been working here for 5 years? Yeah. 5 years? And he's awesome. He's the best employee anybody could ever have. So once these pallets are full, they go into a cool room over here to make sure it's all temperature controlled, and eventually gets sent off to Star Egg in Saskatoon to be washed and ends up on your table. So this would be the brains of the operation, and it's more or less all the computer systems that control everything from temperature in the barn to the amount of feed that they're consuming, to venting. It just helps us monitor the health of the birds and make sure that the barn is as optimal as possible. So for example, in the middle of winter when it's minus 40 outside, it's a balmy 20 degrees Celsius inside. And when it's plus 40 outside, it's still 20 degrees Celsius inside. So the birds kind of have the best climate possible that protects them not only from predators, but makes sure that their health and safety is a top priority for us. I wanted to end off my virtual tour by just showing you just something as common as an office. We monitor everything like I mentioned before, and here's the computer system that we take all our production numbers and the health aspects of the birds. Periodically we have poultry veterinarians that come in to check on the birds, our nutritionist that looks at the health of the birds and the feed, and just make sure we monitor everything as best possible to make sure the birds are as healthy and as happy as they can be. So I appreciate you taking the time to listen to and watch my virtual tour. So with that, I'm looking forward to your questions that you have for me, and hopefully we can learn a little bit more about egg production here in the province of Saskatchewan. Excellent. So as I mentioned before, the part of this is to make sure that if you do have any questions, that you feel free to post them in. So if you're listening in a classroom, just have your teacher post in the comment section. We do have a couple questions that have already been posted, so we're going to get to them, but just post them in, any questions that teachers or students may have. And yeah, you can see on the ticker symbol there, it just put them in the comment section. So the first question is coming is, how many eggs does a chicken lay each day? So typically, we are trying to have every bird lay an egg a day. Now, that doesn't always happen. So the goal with any producer is to make sure that that balanced nutrition and the ration of food makes them as healthy as possible, that they want to lay an egg every day. It doesn't happen. We're probably around 95% of the birds lay an egg a day. Through over their course of their laying season in our barn, it would be roughly, if you would take, say, 365 days out of the year, it'd be right around 320 eggs in a year. So that's roughly how many they would lay. So the next question is, are all chickens white like yours? No, actually not. So there's different varieties of birds that are out there. Typically, the white birds lay white eggs, and the brown birds lay brown eggs. You can also have, say, different exotic birds that would lay, green eggs or blue eggs and stuff like that. But predominantly here in Canada, majority of the eggs are white-shelled from white birds. But just to make the note as well that there is no nutritional difference between, say, a white-shelled egg and a brown-shelled egg. It's all the nutrition that the bird eats that makes the nutrition in the egg. The next question is, how come you have to be quiet when you go into your barn? So birds naturally like to flock together. So that's their natural instinct. And if the birds were not comfortable with me when I initially go in, they would all kind of crowd into one area. So what I have to do is kind of make sure I'm slow. I talk softly when I'm in there so I don't, scare the birds and have them pile up in one area. And that's what happens. That's what happens in the wild as well. So what we try to do is be as quiet as possible when we walk in to make sure the birds are calm and they don't, hurt themselves when they go together. Question from Nicole Webb. Is it hard to take care of all those chickens? Well, I tell you, if I had to carry pails of feed out to them every day for 7,000 birds, yes, it would be quite the chore and trying to pick all those eggs. But it really is amazing. And think of things that have simplified in your own life. Take your own house, for example. You used to have to wash all your dishes by hand. Now we have washing machines or dishwashers. You have washing machines to wash your clothes. So things have become a little bit more automated too on the farming side. So when you look at our barn, all those feeders are automated. So as soon as those birds peck away at that feed, new feed comes in. They have choice water where they can just peck at that nipple drinker and to get the water. So it really has taken a lot of the labor out. I think of when I have to clean the manure out of the barn, it takes me right around 15 to 20 minutes to do that. And I think of the old days when we had to clean out our dairy barn with 50 cows, it sometimes would take us upwards of an hour. So things have got definitely more mechanized to make sure things are a little easier on the labor side for us. But, it is something that is fun to do as well. The next question comes in. What do you do if chickens get sick? So this is actually a really good question, because what's happened, and I think you've probably heard a lot of this in the news, the onset of avian influenza that was in the wild bird populations throughout North America. If that gets into your flock inside a barn, it can have really devastating effects. So the birds would get really ill and they would pass away. They would die from it. So on the onset of any sickness or illness that would come into our barn, so if we see any reason for illness, we right away will call the veterinarian and have them come out and take a look at our birds to see what's wrong. It may be a feed issue, it may be a water issue. So we do water tests and feed tests periodically just to make sure. But really, if there's anything that resembles a sick bird, we want to make sure that we're taking the advice of a veterinarian to make sure that we make them feel better as quick as possible. So Kayla asks, how come your chickens are in a barn all the time? Don't they want to go outside? So this is actually a really good question, Kayla. So it really depends on the farm that the barn that the farmer has made. So in our case, our birds are free to roam around, but they don't have access to outside. There's pros and cons to doing that. So if you buy, for example, an organic egg in a grocery store, they're required to have the ability to go outside. But then that brings in other issues like predators or cold weather. Remember, I said in my virtual tour, when it's minus 40 outside, it's still plus 20 inside the barn. So we take some pros or some of the benefits and the negatives with what we're doing. But really, when you look at how the birds are raised in our barn or other barns and different barns, there's always pros and cons. But really, at the end of the day, we want to make sure the birds are healthy as possible and make sure that they have a good chance to lay their egg and interact with others as well. Okay. What do farmers do with all the chicken manure? So, great question. We put it back on our land. So this is just part of the recycling that we do for sustainable food production. So those birds are eating grains and oil seeds, things like wheat and corn and canola meal. Ours are actually fed a ration that includes flax meal as well to get more omega-3 fatty acids. But when they consume that, they obviously poop out the stuff that they don't need. So as a result of that, when the manure goes out, we pile it up and then we spread it on our land. And what happens is when we put that manure back on the land, that means we need to purchase less fertilizer to grow our crops to, again, feed the birds and everything else. Kayla has another question. Do any of your eggs hatch into baby chicks? Okay, so this is a good question, and I get this lots. No. The reason why there can't be any eggs that hatch is if you look through the video of the farm, you'll never see a rooster in our barn. So they're all females. So in order to have a fertilized egg, you need a rooster. We have no roosters on our farm, so as a result of that, there will be 0 fertilized eggs. So the possibility of having a fertilized egg from our farm is 0. So it's not possible. So those birds that would have both roosters and hens together, they're called broiler breeder farms, and those would produce the eggs to be hatched into chicks that are eventually put on broiler farms and used for chicken meat. How big are the eggs? So it really depends. When we start the birds and they're younger, the eggs are kind of smaller, and they usually don't hit the store shelves. But as the birds get a little bit older and start laying maybe another 2 or 3 weeks, the eggs get a little bit bigger. And typically when you buy eggs in the grocery store, they're all in the large size. So large size, and I don't know the exact weights on them, but the large size is typically what you would purchase. If you've ever cracked an egg open and noticed that there's 2 yolks in it, that is called a jumbo egg or a double yolker. And that sometimes happens when the birds are younger and they lay a larger egg because they put 2 of those yolks together in the same shell. How much does a chicken eat each day? It's lots. We go through every week roughly about 7 to 8 ton of feed. So it kind of depends on the size of the bird. But really what we try to do is make sure that we're matching whatever the size of the bird is and the age of the bird with the nutritional requirements that they meet. Now, this is another thing for me. I don't know all that. My background is not animal science, so that's why we have a animal nutritionist kind of balance our rations to make sure the birds are getting exactly what they need. Nicole is asking, how long have we been an egg farmer or been in this? So we're relatively new. So my brother Andrew and myself started this. It would have been about 5, 6 years ago, actually 6 years ago. We built a brand new barn and got into this business because we wanted to try something a little different. And we really enjoy it. It's something that's definitely, we didn't have any expertise in it before, but we've learned a lot, talked to a lot of different farmers, and really enjoy this. Our family gets fresh eggs whenever we want now too. So it's kind of nice. And actually, just on that too, typically the eggs that you buy in the store, they would have been laid by a hen within about a week to 10 days when you get them in the store. So it's relatively a quick process and a turnaround time to get them in a carton into the grocery store. Is the way farmers produce eggs different in Saskatchewan than other parts of Canada? No, actually not. Typically, they're all roughly the same. So the standards are the same across Canada. So what I do on my farm is required by every other egg farmer throughout the country of Canada. And the other thing is there's variations to the barn. So you saw the barn that we have where the birds can move around. There's other ones where they're in kind of like more kept together in groups. So that's probably more of a common barn in Saskatchewan and the rest of Canada. And it really depends on what the needs and the demands are from consumers to produce those eggs, as well as what the farmer's choice is to build a barn. Is it hard to be a farmer? It can be. So right now I'm trying to plant my crop, and we're cleaning out our barn right away next week. So it can be a little bit stressful, but I'm pretty sure sometimes your teachers would probably say it's a little stressful too, being a teacher. So I think it's probably no different than any other profession, but we do it because we love doing it. How long do your chickens stay on your farm is the question from Carrie. So we do a annual cycle. So like I mentioned, we're cleaning out our barn next week. So the old flock will go out, and we'll bring a new flock in, and they'll stay in our barn for 51 weeks. So we have 1 week where we do a complete cleaning and disinfecting of the barn, especially with the avian influenza kind of floating around in the outside world. We want to make sure it's super, super clean when we get the new flock in. So they're in our barn for 51 weeks before we get a new flock in. Do other members of your family help out? 100%. My nieces are egg cleaning experts. They are in grade 1 and grade 4, and they absolutely love doing that. My son Jackson helps us pick chickens as well when we're doing the flock changes. So yes, it is definitely a family affair, and something that hopefully our kids and our nieces in the future thank us for the great work experience. Question from YouTube: where do the eggs go when they leave the farm? So great question. So our eggs once a week are picked up by a semi. So the truck will come to the barn on, I think it's Thursdays or Fridays. And they take all the pallets of eggs that we have. Typically we'll have anywhere between 4 and 6, depending on how many birds we have in the barn. And they then get trucked into Saskatoon to Star Egg. So in Star Egg in Saskatoon, the eggs are cleaned and then weighed based on the size of that egg, and then put into different cartons. So there's a variety of different things that they do. So for example, on our farm, we have white-shelled, free-run, omega-3 vitamin D enriched eggs. So if you see an egg in the store that has all those things on it on the carton, there's a good chance that it'll come from our farm in Lanigan. And there's other ones. You can have brown eggs, you can have organic eggs, you can have enriched housing system eggs. So there's a variety of these different ones that are all put into separate lots and then packaged separate in the cartons. Why do some eggs taste different than others? So a lot has to do with what that bird eats. So, for example, if the bird is, say, ranging on pasture land and eating, say, bugs and grubs and stuff like that, they're going to have a little bit of a different taste than an egg that has been fed, say, wheat and canola meal and stuff like that. So it really just depends on what the bird actually eats for the taste that that egg will have. But really, the nutritional components of the egg are not very dissimilar from egg to egg. Another question asks, what happens if the power goes out in your barn? So this has happened actually numerous times, and we have a massively huge generator that automatically kicks in. So it is a big John Deere actual generator that automatically kicks in. So what happens when the power goes out, it flips a breaker that tells the generator to kick in. And we need that in our barn because we at no point want the power to go out and have all the vents close and say the heaters stop or the fans stop, because then that can be detrimental to the birds. So we want to make sure we have a backup plan in the event the power does go out. And it has happened a few times. And sometimes that generator has had to run for 12 to 16 hours just to keep up. So we do have some just comments talking about some of the different barns. Feel free to look at our website, farmfoodcaresk.org, under the events and programs. On the ticker symbol, there is some websites as well that you can take a look at. Just if you do have any final questions, we're just about at the end of our time here. There's one more I see. How many pairs of shoes do you have for the barn? So, well, when I come into the barn, so I usually wear cowboy boots. I go into the barn, I take those off, I step over that line and then put on my Crocs and do my changeover of my clothes, put on my coveralls, wash myself. And then when I go into that barn section where the birds are, again, I will change over into my rubber boots. And again, we just don't want any contamination coming from the outside world into where those birds are. So we have various different stages of biosecurity. The other thing too, that just to make mention, and I mentioned it with locks, only those individuals that we want to come into the barn actually come into the barn. And those individuals know our biosecurity protocols, and they have to adhere to it and sign when they're coming in and going out, just to make sure we know who is coming in and leaving. So with that, I think we're at the end of our session here, and I do appreciate everyone taking part in this. There's some great meal plans that you can go through on our website for things like egg salad sandwiches, as well as different learning resources on our website. Feel free to go through with the different, from cattle to or beef to chicken to wheat and canola, just a lot of different options for you to take a look at that. I want to thank you so much for taking a part of this virtual tour. And if you do have any questions after this, feel free to post them on Facebook, YouTube, or just come to our website and give us an email. So with that, I'd like to sign off and again say thank you very much for participating in Meals from the Farm, and I wish everyone all the best.